Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Brand Life Coaches. And I want to talk more about the agony of the lonely, lost child. I did 4 videos on the main family roles, and the lost child video was by far the one that drew the most interest. I did a video on the mascot role, and it only got 800 views. The family hero role got 1,500 views. The scapegoat role, 3,700 views. But the lost child, that role interested people so much it had over 6,100 views. So I guess I just want to talk more about it. And what I'm going to do is tell my own story about being a lost child. And the reason I do this is to see if it resonates with any of you out there. I think there's a lot of lost children who don't know that that's what they were. They just felt uncool, or they felt shy, or they felt defective, or they felt like it was their fault, but they didn't know they were playing a specific family role that really stunted their social development and their sense of self. So I'm going to tell my story with a hope that it might jog some memories loose for you. So my story started in June of 1959. And I know many of you weren't even born then, but where I did not bond with my mother. And I think that's probably one of the main central wounds of a lost child is they don't get the opportunity to bond. That relationship with mother, and these days many times with mother and father, that's your lifeline. That's what teaches you how to attach and how to love and how to be loved. And I was unbonded from day one. Secondly, the role that you end up with in your dysfunctional family has a lot to do with birth order. My older brother was a family hero. He reminded me, he was just a year older than me, but he reminded me of a little John F. Kennedy. And then came this lost, lonely soul, myself, and then came the golden child, 3 boys in a row, and then 4 girls in a row. So 7 children, a borderline mother who had to be the center of attention, and a father who probably had Asperger's, who really wasn't around a lot, and who was a codependent Mr. Nice Guy. So those are the dynamics in my family. Mom needed the attention. There were too many kids. Dad wasn't around. And I was stuck between 2 brothers I couldn't compete with. One of the sad stories of my lost child history is anywhere from about age 4 to age 5, before kindergarten, I was placed in the Air Force Base Child Care Center, and I busted out on several occasions. I climbed over the fence and I tried to walk home, and I was looking for my mommy. That's an unattached, lost child who felt so intimidated by the socialization of the other kids and the scary adults that I was I was running to look for safety. And so instead of getting a therapist involved and addressing the lack of attachment between my mother and I, they just kicked me out of that daycare center. So all through my grade school years, at the end of the year on the report card, the words Mark is such a nice boy. Again and again, every year, Mark is such a nice boy, which I took it as this kid isn't too bright and he has no personality whatsoever at all. And I felt like Charlie Brown. I felt like a square-headed kid. My parents kept my hair cut short and it was fuzzy. So I had a square head and fuzzy hair, and I rarely talked. When you look at pictures, I have some pictures of me at that age, and I'm always just sort of blankly staring off in a dissociated manner, uh, disconnected to the family. It might be a family photo, but I'm a million miles away. Another story of my lost childness was when I was in the fifth grade. I was reading a book. I was reading a book about Mickey Mantle, and uh, I was sitting on the front row. There's 30 kids in the class, and the teacher says, "Mark, what do you think about such and such? Mark, can you put that book away? Mark, we're doing history now." But I was lost in the pages of that book and the great Mickey Mantle, and I couldn't hear what she was saying. So finally, she had to come over and sort of shake me by the arm and bring me back. But that's how intensely we lost children, lose ourselves. Back in the day when I was a kid, you lost yourselves in books and maybe in television. These days, there's so many other things you can lose yourselves in: video games, the internet, social media. There's so many other opportunities. Movies are so much easier to watch on your phone. Another lost child memory is my dad was in the Air Force, so we had to move every year and a half. And I remember coming into class, uh, probably this was about the fourth grade, and it was the first day of class, and there's nobody to orient you. So I walk in friggin' terrified. Everybody's already there, and I'm told to go back to the back of the room and get the books out of my locker. And I went back there and I dropped my books, and everybody turned around and snickered. And I was just mortified. It was like, here it is, the first day, and I'm already the one being made fun of. I was already the uncool kid. Um, More isolation as I got a little older. Um, we had a little black and white television up in our room with cable, and I remember just hiding away on Friday and Saturday evenings watching MASH and Sonny and Cher, and feeling the ache of emptiness and loneliness and trying to fill it up with TV. And just as I was making a friend, just as I was starting to feel a little bit like a cool kid, boom, my dad got, transferred to a new location. I was born in El Paso, Texas, and then we had stops in Kokomo, Indiana, Orlando, Florida, Sembach, Germany, Lubbock, Texas, Great Falls, Montana, and then back to Kokomo. So you never really got a footing as a lost child. So I remember when we finally did settle down in Kokomo, um, I went to a Kokomo basketball Wildcat basketball game, and there were like 3,000 people there, and everybody was going crazy. And I was way up in the stands, and I saw those guys wearing these really cool jerseys, and everybody was yelling for them. And I said, this is for me. I want to be a Kokomo Wildcat." So I would sit all alone, stand all alone in my driveway, my gravel driveway, which is really hard to bounce a basketball in the gravel, and just shoot baskets one after another for hour after hour after hour, dreaming of future glory, dreaming of winning a state championship for the Kokomo Wildcats. And as a lost child, you dream your life away. There's this old song about love and how, dream, 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 dream whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. And the punchline was, the problem was, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. That's sort of how it is with the lost child. You have a very vivid life of daydreaming of what could be. So this is sort of shameful to talk about this, embarrassing. I remember like freshman year of high school, I was supposed to meet a friend at a basketball game, and something happened and he couldn't come. And I had seating, and all the stands were filled, and like every fourth seat around me there was nobody, and then there was me all by myself. And the shameful part, the embarrassing part, is I saw two popular girls way up, hundreds of feet away, look over, notice me sitting there awkwardly, pointed and laughed. And I had a few friends, they just weren't there that night, and that's where my ticket was. But I could feel the utter humiliation of ha ha ha. Everybody is together, but Mark is surrounded by empty chairs. I remember once, as I was developing as a basketball player, I was very, very, very thin. And one night after playing basketball for 6 hours, covered in sweat and probably not weighing 100 pounds, we went over to some girl's house, and I was sitting on the front porch. I remember her name. Her name was Candy Weiser, and she was one of the cool kids. She looked at me and saw how thin I was, and she said, "He's just like Katrina Makovich." And Katrina Makovich was one of the freaks, one of the really unpopular kids, really thin, not attractive. So she was likening me to a male version of Katrina Makovich. Even when I started to get popular, due to I did make the varsity basketball team, and I did start, which made you a hero of sorts. But there was this thing called Boys Club, and everybody knew about it. And every Tuesday night at 5:30, all the guys went and did really cool guy stuff, and nobody told me about it. And it was halfway through the year when I found out about it, and I was like, how come nobody told me about it? That's the pain. That there's a chip missing in your socializing, connection, friend making, and you're sort of invisible, and you just get left out of a lot of stuff. Then after I graduated from high school and I went off to college, only one time did my parents visit early on during a parents' visitation, and they came, and it was just weird. They didn't feel like they belonged there. It was awkward. They sat through it. They stayed for a very short amount of time. And I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel parented. It was just something that they were checking a list and coming because that's what you were supposed to do. When I got married, I just walked down the aisle, and I went over and I gave my dad a hug. It was just awkward. He wasn't wrapped up in the joy of his second son getting married. He just didn't feel comfortable with it, and I knew it. So those are some examples of painful moments. They're little things. They're places where you're shy, where you're unpopular, where you're terrified of the shame of social isolation, but you find a lot of comfort in the quietness and in the aloneness. It's both painful and comforting at the same time. So this video isn't really about treating uh, yourself and in therapy and recovery your lost child wounds. This is more about exploring it further to see if you might have a lost child wound, or if someone in your family has a lost child wound. So, but I will say 5 things really quickly about the recovery process for a lost child. It's about developing a solid sense of yourself. And if you're an ultra codependent, that's hard to do. It's about finding your place in the world, what you do well, what your gifts are. It's about learning how to connect with people and to not hide your stuff due to shame, and how to be vulnerable. The problem is that you can develop a sense of self and then it can be shattered in narcissistic abuse syndrome. So you could be blossoming and coming out of your shell and not being lost anymore, and then get shattered, and you're right back in time. You're right back being shy and withdrawn and isolated. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. But one of the cool things is I was meditating today, and I knew I was going to do a video on my story of being a lost child. And as I was meditating, 3 fellows came to mind who were old friends. One is a man in his mid to late 60s who's in poor health. I hope he's still alive. And he was my therapist and supervisor. And I haven't been able to reach him, but I wrote him a letter. He's not answering his phone, so I wrote him a letter. So he was a mentor. One is a guy who is my age, and I asked him to play basketball, and he was on my recovery team. And one is a young man who's studying therapy, who's a son of a good friend of mine, and somebody maybe I would like to mentor myself. So I hope this spoke to you. Being a lost child, it robs you of your potential. It robs you of your joy. It robs you of your color. It robs you of your people. It robs you of your tribe. And I hope that my share and my struggles and my pain give you insight into yours, and that we'll do that video on recovery and help you to find your place in the world, find your place in community, and really blossom and shine and have joy and have sense of self, and to find your people and to have joy fitting into your people. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. If you do, you'll be notified when our new videos come out. You'll also be notified of our wonderful community on Tuesday night about 8:15ish for an hour and a half. We call it Church for the Narcissistically Abused, and it's a thriving community. We now have a Facebook group that is thriving and growing and adding people all the time. So I just also encourage you guys to check out my website, familytreecounseling.com, because there's some good books. I don't have a book on lost child, but I have some good books on abandonment, on recovery from narcissistic abuse syndrome, on shame, and on healing a marriage after an affair. So God bless you, all my brothers and sisters who are fellow lost children. I hope this speaks to you. When you connect with other lost children, you're not so lost anymore. Thank you for watching today, and God bless.